Did you know that you could rotate a bust dart to almost any position along the edge of a top pattern? I'm going to show you how today on Fit Tip Tuesday. Let's start by looking at one of my go-to pattern drafting books by Helen Joseph Armstrong. It's the Pattern Making for Fashion Design. I'm putting a link in the description below if anyone would like to get a copy of this book. It's really one of the industry standards for pattern drafting. I got my copy when I was teaching fashion design for Gibbs College several years ago now, and it's something that I refer to on a regular basis when I'm working on patterns or trying to fit something or trying to create a shape for something. I love it. I've tabbed a bunch of pages here, and they have a whole chapter on dart manipulation. Darts are put into flat patterns to create curves and shape to fit your body. So one of the most popular kind of darts is a bust dart, and bust darts are designed to give you or create a bust cup to fit your shape into when you're making a fitted non-stretch or stretch pattern. And I thought this illustration was very cool. This is page 67 of this book, and you can see it's showing all the different places that you can rotate a dart to. So I thought it'd be fun to play with some of these things. I'm going to show you how to move a bust dart to a different location, and we're going to start with a waist dart. I made a bunch of copies of a standard half-scale bodice that has a waist dart. If you follow along with me, you may remember that I did a basic bodice draft along, and in that process we drafted bodices that had a waist dart. That's the most basic dart to start with if you're drafting a sloper for yourself. So let's take a look at this here. I made a bunch of copies so I can show you a bunch of different things. The first thing I want to show you is this dart is drawn to be at the apex at this moment. But when we go to finish the dart, we're going to back it away from the apex. So the first thing I want to remind everybody is when you're working with your bust dart, the bust dart doesn't come all the way to your apex. It's backed off a little bit. And depending on the cup size you are, it could be backed off a little bit more or less. So for cup sizes A and B and C, I would say the tip of the dart should be approximately a half an inch away from your apex. As the cup size gets larger, you could back that up even more to 5/8, 3/4, and then even an inch to get it to lay smoothly. If your bust dart goes all the way to your apex, it creates sort of a pucker, or it just does not lay flat. Keep that in mind. For these examples, we're going to say that the tip of this dart is the apex of this dart. I'm just going to label that apex. If you're designing something from your basic bodice sloper, you can easily rotate this around to go in the direction that you want it for the style of the top you're making. And basically the way this works is, let's say we want to take this waist dart and make it into a bust dart. So what we're going to do here is we are going to draw a line to where we want our bust dart to be. Now notice I drew it here so it's horizontal or parallel to the horizontal balance line. It could also be at a little bit of an angle. Okay, so really you can draw this anywhere you want from horizontal to pointing slightly up towards your apex. So you're going to establish where you want the bust dart to be first. Then what you're going to do is you're going to cut out, and I'm not going to cut it out, I'm just going to cut one leg, and then I'm going to cut straight through the line where I want my new dart to be. So the reason why they call this rotating a dart is because you're literally going to rotate it from the waist to the bust by closing the waist dart, and I'm just going to rotate it around like this. And now you can see what has happened here is we've closed the waist dart. Now we have a bust dart. Sometimes you want to rotate your dart completely to close the waist dart. Some tops have both a waist and a bust dart. So in that case, you can close it only part way, and then you've got 2 darts to work with. Sometimes if you have a large bust and you're working with your bust dart and it's a huge bust dart, one of the things you can do is break your bust dart up into 2 darts so you don't have such a huge dart intake with such a large cup all in one spot. And sometimes that fits better if you're not trying to do the entire dart in one spot. So you can see here, if I close it only halfway, I have a smaller bust dart versus if I close the waist all the way, you can see I have a pretty good sized dart there. So you can decide those things. You can also create, let's say you want to close this. So I'm going to tape this shut. Okay. And you can see now I have a bust dart, but let's say you want to have part bust dart, but then maybe you also want to have a second dart coming off of the shoulder, for example. What I'm going to do is I'm going to draw myself a guideline from the middle of the shoulder down to the apex. I think you can guess what we're going to do now. We are going to slash the pattern through the shoulder to the apex, and then we're going to swing it out like this. You can see that this also reduces the size of your bust dart because you're splitting it up with the shoulder. Before I show you a few other ways to rotate a dart, I want to talk about why you would want to rotate a dart. And interestingly, I was answering my questions from subscribers on my YouTube channel this morning, and somebody was asking me about a prominent tummy adjustment and what to do about the bust dart because her bust was close to her tummy. And it occurred to me that if she closed the bust dart and rotated it down to the hem, that would give her more fullness at the hem and reduce the amount of extra she was going to have to slash and spread her pattern to make room for a prominent tummy. So if you're looking at yourself in the mirror and you're working with a non-stretch shirt pattern that has a bust dart and maybe also waist darts, look and see how your silhouette is shaped, and just know that it's okay to eliminate the bust dart by rotating it to the waistline and then not sewing that waist dart, leaving it open to add ease. And you can also rotate it other places to create the shape that you're looking for or minimize the size of your bust dart. So I just wanted to point out that rotating darts can help you fit your garment by releasing dart intake and then not sewing it up in its new position, in addition to creating interesting styles by changing the position of the dart. So let's look at a few other things that you can do with rotating your bust dart. I'm going to start with a fresh front bodice here because this time what I want to do is let's rotate it from waist to shoulder, and I'm going to show you what that looks like. This time I'm going to draw a guideline from the front armhole notch to the tip of the dart. I'm going to open up my dart here. I'm going to slash to and through my armhole. Now here's what's interesting about this rotated dart. You can see here I've closed the waist dart half by half, and I've opened a dart into the armhole. What does that look like? Does anyone see it? This can actually be, I'm just going to tape this into position to show you something. Okay, so what we're creating here is a waist and armhole dart, but what would happen if I took this whole piece and cut it off or separated it from the center of the pattern? I would end up with a princess seam that goes to the armhole. So rotating the darts can also change your style from fitting with darts to fitting with style lines, like a princess seam. So literally, if I cut this, let me just cut it right here so you can see. Now, doesn't that look like the start of a side front and center front pieces to create a princess seam? So this is kind of fun. So you can do that. Another thing you can do, I'm going to show you one other fun thing you can do. I'm going to rotate the dart this time into the neckline. Okay, and if I rotate the dart into the neckline, let me just cut it and rotate it. I think what I'll do is I'll just cut it here, and I'll make a little hinge and I'll cut through here. Okay, so when I close this one, notice what happens. It opens up a big gap in the neckline. You can sew that shut and create a fitted look, or you can fill this with paper and gather up your neckline edge to create a gathered neckline. This is another example of you can rotate a dart to a new position and then not sew that dart, but instead create gathers by gathering up the edge instead of sewing the dart shut. So it can add a different style to your garment. You can imagine, I'm going to show you in the book here that you can rotate the dart anywhere. So let's just look at this really closely. I just want to point it out. You can use the technique I just shared with you to rotate the dart anywhere along the pattern. You can see here we have the French dart, which is a really cool low diagonal that can be used for shaping. You have the straight side dart, which is commonly known as your bust dart. The mid armhole dart, a dart coming straight from the shoulder, the tip of the shoulder, mid shoulder, neckline, center front edge, bust level. That's another place where you can rotate your dart and then create gathers there. I've seen that in ready to wear. And then also center front to waist. So you can really play with your pattern pieces and get interesting lines on the front of your bodice by changing where the dart is. And I love this illustration because it shows you where the dart ends up in all of these examples. So the last thing I want to do today is show you, after you rotate a dart, how do you complete it so it's going to fit your body. And I talked about this at the beginning of the video, where your bust dart needs to end before your apex, meaning where your apex is, that's the fullest part of your bust. You want the dart to stop, or you want the tip of the dart to be away from that a little bit. So let's just create a simple waist and bust dart bodice. So I'm going to go ahead and draw myself a guideline like this. And then I'm going to open it so I have two darts. I'll have the waist dart and I'll have the bust dart. All right, and I'm just going to rotate this to close it half and half. I'm just going to rotate it like this. So we have a little bust dart and we have a little waist dart. And I'm going to tape that into place. And then I'm going to just take a little of this side paper here to fill in my bust dart, like this. All right, so now we have our two darts, and I'm just going to highlight the blue edge of the bottom dart leg here. So there are our two darts. Let me just highlight them so you can see them. Okay, so now that we've got them rotated into the position we want, we also have to back them up a little bit, meaning we don't want, if this is where the apex is, we don't want them to extend that far. I'm going to measure a ½ inch away, and I'm going to draw myself a little dot like this. And then I'm going to measure a 1/2 inch away over here. I'm going to draw myself a little dot. So these dots represent a move of a 1/2 inch from the apex. So if this is the apex, I back them up a 1/2 inch. That's perfect for A, B, and C cup sizes. If you're working with a D plus cup size, you can back that up even more. 5/8 of an inch for a D cup, 3/4 of an inch for double D, triple D, and almost an inch if you're G and bigger cup size, because you want to give the tip of the dart room to release to create the shape of the cup. After you've decided where you're going to back your dart up, you're basically going to just reconnect the lines from the original end of the dart leg to the new position. So it's going to look like this. All right, so now you can see completed darts. You can see they're backed up and they're ready to go. The last thing I want to show you is how do you fill in the ends of the dart? Because they don't just go straight across. You need to have a little bit of shaping along the side seam and waistline edges, so when they're sewn shut, all the raw edges will align with each other. The way I like to do this is I'm going to let me just cut off a little bit of this extra here. And I'm going to fold my dart. I'm going to fold the bottom dart leg up to the top like this. Now, if you're working with a B, C cup, fold the bottom dart leg up to the top. If you're working with a D plus, fold the top dart leg down, and that will bring the intake face up versus face down. And here's what I'm going to show you what that means. So I'm putting the lower dart leg up to the upper dart leg, and if I flip it over, you can see the dart intake is folded down. If you fold it the other way, the dart intake will be folded upward, and that can be minimizing for larger cup sizes. So I have folded my bust dart into position. To get that shape I'm looking for, if I cut the edge of the pattern while it's folded like this, and then I open it back up, you can see it's giving me that shape. See how there's that little V shape right there? And usually what happens is when you fold the bottom one up, you get a straight line from your armhole to the middle of the dart, and then it comes back in a little bit. And you're going to do the same thing with your waist dart. I like to fold my darts so the dart intake is facing the side seam. So I've got that folded into position, and I'm just going to cut it. Okay, and again, you can see I've got a little bit of shaping there. Let's just fold up both of these darts. I'm just going to fold them and tape them. And I love doing this on paper because it shows you what you've created out of a flat piece of fabric here. So if I fold both of these things into shape, you can see I now have a bodice with room for a bust. Oops, there we go. All right. So you can see now, see that? You can see there's actually room for a bust in there. So that's how you rotate a dart. And I've given you a few things to think about in terms of using darts to fit your garment. If you need to create more ease somewhere, consider rotating the dart to that direction and leaving it open, or maybe just sewing it a little bit less, meaning make the dart smaller to leave some of the ease there. Also, I've shown you that you can rotate darts that can create a style line like a princess seam, and how to complete your darts after you've rotated them from the apex. I hope you enjoyed this Fit Tip Tuesday showing how to rotate darts. If you have any questions or comments, please post them below and I will help you. Join me tomorrow for a fun episode of Subscriber Q&A where I will be answering a subscriber's question, but it's a mystery for now, so you'll have to join me to find out what we're going to talk about. And then on Friday, during FabFit Friday, I'm having a special guest. I'm having Trisha from the Creative Costume Academy join me, and she has something really exciting she's doing, and I want to share it with everybody. So make sure you join me at 1 o'clock Eastern Standard Time on Friday for FabFit Friday. It's going to be a fun one. Thank you for watching and have a wonderful rest of your day.